It's kind of funny when you think about it. Some of the most amazing music, the most incredible art, it doesn't always come from this place of like total freedom. A lot of the time, it actually comes from a really structured, almost quiet space. So today, we're going to tune in and listen closely to that silent symphony.
Yeah, we all have this idea, right? That to be creative, you need a totally blank canvas, endless possibilities. But what if that's not it at all? What if the real secret, the actual magic, happens when you're cornered, when your options are super limited?
And that right there, that's what we can call the creative paradox. It's this wild, counterintuitive idea that putting a fence around your creative playground, well, it doesn't actually trap you. It forces you to figure out new, more interesting ways to play the game. So you've got these two totally different ways of thinking. On one side, there's boundless freedom. And look, it sounds amazing, right? But what usually happens? You get hit with the paralysis of choice. Just too many options, and you can't even start. But then, on the other side, you've got creative constraints. Think about it, a crazy deadline, almost no budget, a really specific set of rules. All of a sudden, necessity just kicks in, and that limitation forces you to focus like a laser.
And this is not some new agey psychological trick, you know? This idea has an absolutely incredible track record. I mean, history is just packed with examples of constraints being this secret muse behind some of the greatest things humanity has ever done.
I mean, just look at this pattern throughout history. Think about ancient Egypt. They didn't have any of our modern machinery, and yet the builders of the pyramids achieved this mind-boggling precision. Okay, let's jump forward to the late 1590s. Shakespeare, he wasn't just chilling out, writing poems when the mood struck. No way. He was on a super tight schedule, cranking out hits for the Globe Theater. And out of that intense pressure, we get Romeo and Juliet. Then let's go to World War II. Steel was being rationed, right? So this designer, Raymond Loewy, he couldn't use all the steel he wanted. So what did he do? He created these beautiful, streamlined trains that were elegant because of that limitation, not in spite of it. It's amazing. And on that Shakespeare point, the scholar Stephen Greenblatt points out something brilliant. He says the power of the play wasn't just some stroke of genius that happened in a quiet room. No. It was sharpened, he uses the word honed, by the very real pressure of having to captivate a crowd and fill those seats night after night after night. That pressure is what cooked the poetry to absolute perfection. Okay, so we've seen the proof in history, but why does this actually work? Like, what is going on inside our brains when we're staring down a limitation? Well, that's where we get into the actual psychology of focus. And hey, this isn't just a cool theory. It's actually backed up by data. A pretty recent study from the Journal of Creative Psychology found something that just blew my mind. 60%, that's 60, of innovative solutions, they didn't come from some wide-open brainstorming session. Nope, they came directly from people having to work within set boundaries. That is a huge majority. So here's how it actually breaks down in your head. First, the constraint just limits your options, right? Which is great because it gets you right past that terrifying blank page anxiety. Second, since there are fewer paths to go down, your brain can really sharpen its focus. It just pours all its energy into this one, specific, well-defined problem. And third, and this is the real secret sauce, it forces you to be ingenious. When the easy, obvious path is totally blocked, you have to find a new one. You want a perfect example of this in action? Look no further than Frank Lloyd Wright's masterpiece, Falling Water. I mean, the guy didn't get some flat, easy piece of land with a blank check. No, he got a difficult, rocky hillside, over a waterfall, and a tight budget. And those exact constraints are what forced him to integrate the house into the landscape itself, creating this absolute masterpiece of architecture that literally could not have existed any other way. But what's really incredible is that this pattern, it's not just about human psychology or design. If you start looking for it, you'll see this principle, this universal melody, playing out absolutely everywhere. In art, in literature, even in nature itself. Okay, let's start with music. Think about J.S. Bach. This guy wasn't just sitting around making up nice tunes. He was working within the unbelievably strict, almost mathematical rules of Baroque music, and inside that super rigid framework, he creates the Goldberg Variations, a piece so complex and beautiful that we're still studying it today. The rules didn't box him in, they gave him the scaffolding to build his genius on. Or how about literature? Let's talk about Jane Austen.
As a woman back then, her whole world was basically confined to the home. But did she see that as a dead end? Not at all. She took those tight constraints, all the strict social manners, the marriage plots, the class stuff, and used them as the actual fabric for her brilliant, witty novels like Pride and Prejudice that we still love today.
And that brings us to maybe the most powerful example there is, nature. Think about a massive, towering oak tree, one of the most majestic things you can see, right? Well, its entire life starts from this profound constraint, a tiny little acorn. All of that incredible potential is packed into that one little limited space. And from that super focused energy, something absolutely magnificent grows. It's just wow. Okay, so we've bounced from history to psychology and all the way to the natural world. Now, let's bring this big idea back down to earth. How can we actually consciously use this powerful principle in our own work, in our own lives? How do we start conducting our own symphony?
So, first things first, let's get the definition straight. A creative constraint, it's not an obstacle, it's a limitation. Could be time, resources, rules, whatever, that you decide to treat as a catalyst. It's the spark plug, not the brake pedal. Just seeing it that way, that's the first and maybe the most important step.
Really, what this all boils down to is a shift in perspective. So instead of dreading that deadline, try welcoming it like a muse that's going to bring you focus. Instead of complaining about what you don't have, look for the hidden beauty, the opportunity in that scarcity. You've got to trust that boundaries are there to make your craft sharper, not to hold you back. Bottom line, start thinking of limits as your partners in creativity. And that really leaves us with one last thing to chew on. Think about your own life for a second. Your job, your hobbies, whatever you're working on. What are the limits, the constraints that you're dealing with right now? And what if, instead of fighting against them, you could start to see them as the silent notes that are actually composing your own totally unique creative symphony? Something to think about, right?